How would our next witness wish to be known?
She's called Jan.
Jan, please.
Please state your full name
Janice Whitehorn Cox.
and repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely,
I do solemnly, sincerely,
and truly declare and affirm
and truly declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Jan, you're here to talk about your mum's infection with hepatitis C and about your own infection transmitted from your mother either in utero or during your birth.
Mm-hmm.
Your mum had kidney problems from birth.
Yeah.
And she required dialysis from about 1971.
Yes.
She was then given a kidney transplant in December 1973, during which she also received blood transfusions.
Yes, that's correct.
And your mum thinks that when she had the transplant, it was one of those transfusions that infected her with hepatitis C.
Yes.
In 2001, when your mum was attending a routine checkup, your mum was told she had hepatitis C.
Yes.
How was she told about her diagnosis?
She was told publicly in the waiting room, which upset her quite a lot.
And that was the first she knew about it?
Yes.
You were 22 when your mum was diagnosed. She was briefly told that your dad and you should be tested, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But your mum wasn't treated until 2016.
Yes, that's correct.
Why was that?
She was never offered it, basically. Yeah, she was just told you had it and then off you pop, carry on with life.
And what triggered her actually having the treatment?
I believe it was 2015, me and my husband Gary here, and we've been trying to conceive for 5 years, since I was 30, but there's no joy. So we went to the doctors.
Just a minute, we'll hear all about your story, but in essence,
right.
You were having treatment.
Yes.
And so your mum then sought treatment herself.
Yes, sorry, I was going long-winded way around. Yes, I had treatment, and we wrote to our MP. She wasn't eligible for treatment because she hadn't got enough liver cirrhosis, but obviously she wanted it because nobody wants to go along like that. So she asked her renal people, and they said she wasn't eligible. And then we went right into Andrew Sellis, our MP, who then somehow got it through, and she had it.
So because
just a moment. Jan, you can take your time if you want. You don't have to get it all out all at once.
I'm going to try.
And Mr. Razor-Butler will give you plenty of time.
Okay, thank you.
So in essence, you were having treatment, your mum wanted treatment, but she wasn't eligible because she didn't have a cirrhotic liver.
Yes.
But after the MP got involved, she was then able to have treatment.
Yes, and she does have a cirrhotic liver, but it wasn't on the scale. I think it has to be 12, and it was like a 5 or a 6. So.
Your mum has cleared the infection.
Yes.
But she has ongoing difficulties with breathlessness and arthritis.
Yes.
And she attributes those difficulties to having had the Hep C.
The arthritis, yes. The breathlessness she didn't have prior to the treatment. It seems to be a side effect that's been ongoing from that.
By the time your mum was told she had hepatitis C, as we've said, you were 22 and you weren't living at home at that time. So she told you about her diagnosis and for the need for you to be tested over the telephone.
Yes.
What did you then do about that?
At the time I was studying in Liverpool, I had a rough knowledge of sexual health and that sort of thing from school, so I just went to the gum clinic and said, can you give me just a test for everything, please? Which I assume would cover the Hep C, but now I find out it didn't because they don't test for that, and they still don't now, actually.
But at the time, you understood that you had been tested for hepatitis
C?
Yes,
at the time I thought I was clear of it because, as far as I was aware, I said test for everything. Because yes, there was no guidance on it, really. I was just up there doing my best, really.
In about 2001, you went to your GP because you were feeling very tired. What were you told at that point?
Just not a lot, really. Just to go away. Yeah, like, if you're overweight, it's probably that. Go away.
At that time, you were just told you were a young adult, you were overweight, so they didn't even do any blood tests at that point.
I'm trying to work back I should have drawn a timeline. It's hard to think. But no, I had requested blood tests over the duration of my appointments at the doctor's, and I think I had about 2 or 3, but none of them tested for it.
Your health continued to deteriorate,
Yeah.
and between 2005 and 2009, you went to your GP about 13 times.
Yes.
What were your symptoms at that time?
Sort of tiredness, joint pain, muscle pain. My hair was falling out, and I didn't feel myself. If that makes sense. I had a lot of nausea. I'd sort of get rashes all the time.
On one occasion, you took your mum with you to the GP.
I did, yes.
She said that she had hepatitis C,
Yeah.
and asked whether it was possible that you did too.
Yes.
And what did the GP say?
I can't exactly remember, but he didn't really acknowledge it because he didn't give us a blood test for it. He just dismissed it. He was just generally fairly dismissive about the whole thing. He was mainly concentrated on my weight and go away, deal with that.
You said in your statement that by then your weight was really increasing, regardless of the exercise you were doing, because you were, and you also had joint and muscle pain.
I mean, I was doing my best, but you're kind of limited when you're mainly asleep and everything hurts.
And he simply dismissed you.
Yes.
You then gave up going to see the GP until about 2015,
Yes.
by which time you were 36. And you went on that occasion because you were having fertility problems.
Yes.
You recall then that blood tests were taken,
Yeah.
and you received a telephone call from your GP.
Yes.
And what were you told in that telephone conversation?
I was told that I had hepatitis C over the telephone and just to come back and have it confirmed.
You've said you think this was the worst possible way of being given the news. How do you think it should have been done?
So there's no good way of telling anybody that, but ideally if they can call you in so you've got moral support with you. I mean, it was on the mobile telephone, so I could have been anywhere. Obviously, I wasn't driving, but you could be anywhere in any situation, so it's not ideal. It was quite upsetting. Yeah.
And you would have preferred to be asked to come in person with someone there to support you?
Yes, yeah. I mean, to be honest, it wasn't a shock because my mum had it and I kind of had an inkling, but it was still I thought I'd been tested 3 times, so it was like that's not even a word, sorry. And they called me in after that to tell me I was diabetic, which also floored me. So they'll call you in for that, and I can't believe that they didn't call me in for the hepatitis C diagnosis.
You were referred to the hospital to see a hepatologist, and what were you told at that first appointment?
Not very much. Just you've got hepatitis C, we're going to manage it. Yeah.
You've said in your statement you were given no information on managing or understanding the infection. I was just told once again, with no thought or understanding, to go and lose some weight.
Yes.
I was given no information about the risk to others of my infection and was not advised that my husband or previous partners should get tested.
Yes, there was no advice given on that.
We've had a statement from Dr. Canna, the doctor in question, in response to your statement, and that will be uploaded on the inquiry website as our usual practice. But she says this in her response. I'm going to read a reasonable amount of it because it's relevant to some later questions I want to ask you about. My first ever consultation with Jan was on May 2015. I was aware she'd been found to be hepatitis C positive as part of a panel of fertility tests and thus referred to the hepatology department. I remember the consultation well. She attended with both her partner and her mother. I was informed that her mother had been infected with hepatitis C as a consequence of blood transfusion. She'd been told in the past she'd been tested for hepatitis C and she was negative. which was your understanding at the time that you had been,
Yeah.
but you've since found you weren't. She'd sought medical attention from her GP a few times and asked to be tested for hepatitis C, but was not tested for this. The consultation was clearly emotionally difficult for the patient. She was very tearful during this and upset about not having been tested before. We explored issues of routes of transmission, but concluded that it was likely she acquired it through vertical transmission from your mother. I can assure the inquiry that it is my usual practice to discuss the routes of transmission of hepatitis C, discuss how the patient may have acquired it, discuss the possibility of transmitting it to others, and also go through the natural history of the virus and consequences of infection. The main focus of my consultation, however, is establishing state of liver disease and discussing treatment options. Do you want to respond to that last part about what you were told in relation to treatment options?
Can you just repeat the bit I need to answer? Sorry.
She says that it was her usual practice to discuss the state of liver and treatment options. Is that your experience of that first appointment?
Yes, yeah. To be honest, I was quite emotional that day, so my recollection was quite hazy. But I wasn't offered immediate treatment. I think it was just again, she said go off and lose some weight. That would probably help it. Irrelevant. But yeah, there was no at that time. I don't think there was any firm offer of treatment options because I wasn't eligible because at that point I hadn't had any tests, any ultrasounds or liver biopsies. So it was just like the first initial meeting, just to say, hey, I think.
You were referred to the fertility clinic around this time as well, and as you say, you had also been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which floored you, in your words. In terms of your fertility, looking back now at the results, those investigations at that time indicated that there were a good number of follicles, so you were fertile.
Yes, that's correct.
And the fertility clinic then asked the hepatologist for advice about the implications of the hepatitis C. We're just going to look at that letter. It's 2000-004, please. And we can see the letter, which says, "Thank you for writing to me about this lady's fertility treatment. She has hepatitis C. She's unlikely to have any cirrhosis of the liver. In an ideal world, we'd like to get on and treat her hepatitis C, but this can certainly wait till such a time or when her fertility issues have been sorted. Alternatively, we could treat her with PEG ribavirin for 24 weeks. She would avoid pregnancy for another 6 months following treatment due to teratogenicity and then restart her fertility treatment. Certainly from a hepatitis C point of view, there's no urgency to start treatment as yet. I'm waiting for her liver biopsy, after which I'll review her in clinic." This was advice you'd also been given at the appointment. How did you feel about that advice?
I was very unhappy with the advice. They were telling me to carry on to try and conceive and possibly pass on the hep C, which I didn't think was the right thing to do. I found it quite atrocious, to be honest. Because if I'd have passed it on sexually or any other way like that, consciously, I'd probably get arrested. I think it's an actual arrestable offence. But they're asking me to pass it on to a baby, which just seems... I don't understand how that... Yeah, I just don't understand it.
You were also upset that she was advising that you could wait for treatment despite not yet having a liver biopsy.
Yes.
So there wasn't a clarity over the condition of your liver either.
Yes.
You wrote to Dr. Canner after your first appointment. Could we have 2000-006, please? And you said this. Second paragraph, I know we discussed the option of waiting until the fertility issues are sorted, but after sleeping on it, it doesn't make sense to wait for treatment until and if I ever conceive. I also do not wish to risk passing it on to the baby and then have them go through all this too. So I would, biopsy results pending, like to have treatment as soon as possible and then continue with the fertility treatment once I'm cleared of the hep C. just a little bit further down. My urgency, you ask for things to get going. My urgency on this is for 2 reasons. Obviously, on the fertility front, I'm now 36, to be 37 in January. I hadn't planned to leave it this late, but due to not being diagnosed with the Hep C for over 18 years of being tested for various things, it had put everything back somewhat. But I'm glad, as I wouldn't want to have passed it on unknowingly or knowingly. You raise some concerns about the impact of treatment on your work, and then on the following page, in the second main paragraph, you say, "So in the light of my need to keep working and running out of time in which to start a family, if possible, I'd like to start the treatment of the 12-week course ASAP. Again, I appreciate it will be dictated by the liver results, etc. But if it's all possible, before Christmas is fine. I just need to get it over with so I can carry on with the rest of my life and carry on with the fertility treatment, unless you think the treatment will have a derogatory effect on conception." So at that stage, you raise specifically a concern about whether the treatment would have an impact on your ability to conceive. Were you advised at any time anything about the possible impact of treatment on fertility?
No, I wasn't. I was made aware of all the other symptoms, which I could handle, but not that one.
There was a delay in you having your liver biopsy, but when it was done, it showed mild portal inflammation but no cirrhosis. And you were advised that there was a 5% risk of transmission of the hepatitis C to any baby, should you choose to try and conceive. And you were given that choice of whether you tried and conceive before the treatment, or whether you wait and then restart fertility treatment. How do you feel about what you were told then and being given that choice?
I'm angry that they suggested it, and I never would have, as you can tell, I wouldn't have entertained that idea.
How do you feel about their use of the 5% statistic?
Oh, that bit. Yeah, obviously, them, it's just they're looking at numbers and that's the statistic, but I'm sitting standing evidence that it is pass-onable. Again, not a word. But, so how, just that. Sorry.
Don't worry. Just take your time, Jan. You found it difficult that they were quoting a statistic when you felt that you were that statistic. I think
it's
is
all
what
very
you
well
said
them saying,
to me.
oh, it's only this amount. I'm like, well, here, this is that 5%.
The fertility clinic then discharged you back to your GP until you'd lost some weight and until the hepatology treatment was complete. But at that point, were you in fact offered any treatment for the hepatitis C?
I don't... Without stuff in front...
That's okay.
I can't...
Within your statement, you say that you weren't offered
Right,
anything.
okay, that, yes. I wasn't.
You say in your statement you were refused treatment as you weren't unwell enough.
Yes.
And that went on for a year.
Yes.
And at that point you wrote to your consultant begging for treatment.
I did, yes.
You were then told after that year that you would be treated with a 3-month course of ribavirin and sofosbuvir.
Yes.
But were you in fact treated with that at the start?
No, I wasn't. That's what they suggested, and I was happy with that. It seemed to be the newest and most less effective. Most effective but less side effects drugs, and obviously the quickest one. So all in all, that on my timeline of work and family, that was like a winner. And then so we kind of agreed on that, and then we sort of had another meeting, and they're like, actually, we can't do that. You're not eligible for that one. We have to do the pegylated interferon and ribavirin option, which is longer with more side effects and less chance of working.
You were told that because you didn't have cirrhosis, then you weren't entitled to treatment with the newer drugs.
Yes.
You had to have the interferon treatment.
Yeah.
What was the effect of that treatment on you, the interferon?
It was horrible. There's all the expected side effects of the like the tide. It's basically like having Hep C, but like magnified. Sort of like all the joint pain and the muscle pain and the tiredness, the nausea. Very irritable, very angry, very teary. Not really a pleasure to be around for my husband at all, really. And the tablets were fine, but the injections were horrible. You have to, yeah.
And emotionally, you've not been able to throw out the used interferon EpiPens. In fact, you've got the bag today with you because it's so significant for you.
I know it does seem a bit silly, but I kept them because when I was told I had to have it, I know I desperately didn't want to take them, and I knew in my gut that they were wrong. So I kept them because I just, I don't know, I can't let go because they have had a massive detrimental effect on my health. And I would like to burn them eventually, but until this is cleared up, I can't do that.
After the interferon treatment, your levels were undetectable 5 weeks post-treatment, but then it returned after 12 weeks.
Yes.
You asked to be given the shorter ribavirin and sofosbuvir treatment.
Yes.
But you had to fight to get it.
Yes. Again, there was in no hurry to sort of proceed with it because obviously I didn't have cirrhosis of the liver, and there are more important people in the queue in system of that sort of thing, and I didn't want to push ahead. But on the other hand, my time was running out, sort of fertility-wise, so I was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
You did eventually get that treatment.
I did, yes.
And it cleared the virus.
It did, yes.
But by then you were 39.
Yes.
Once you'd cleared the virus, you felt physically much better in yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I felt amazing. Yeah, it was brilliant. I couldn't have been a happier person.
And you decided to get yourself into physically the top condition you could.
Yes, I mean, I started with the first treatment, sort of going to the gym, just trying to get fit to deal with it. And then when it obviously came back, I sort of was on a mission to get, like, treatment ready, which I'd done so. And also, I bring it up, I started boxing because the moves were mental and I was a cunt. And it's the only way I could kind of channel it. So I trained really hard and then I got through the second treatment. And then I kind of threw myself into it, sort of afterwards, sort of very much so.
You needed a letter during that time to confirm that you were clear of hepatitis C. Once you'd cleared the virus, in order to keep boxing, you needed a letter.
Yes.
When you asked for that letter, the specialist nurse warned you about coming into blood-to-blood contact with anyone. What did she say to you?
If I remember from, you got that, she just says, oh, obviously don't do anything risky, blah, 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 to put yourself at risk again, which I think obviously she has to say that as part of her job. I'm like, Jesus, I fought so hard to fight this stuff, and you think I'm going to put myself in a situation, boxing's not a blood sport, just in case you didn't know. But yeah, I got a little bit angry, to be honest.
She'd said, I've also warned her about other people's blood and coming in contact with that, and that she should be careful.
Because obviously I was given no, I mean, as I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I was educated. If you have unprotected sex, you get AIDS, you die. So that's kind of been my mantra for life. So I think that's how I've always been. So I'm quite lucky in that front. I would never, in the whole time of existence, I've not done anything unsafe or dodgy with blood and sexually. So I'm quite pleased that I think that's safeguarded the Hep C, I'll be honest. So I know all about that. So to be told by someone who didn't give me any advice in the beginning about that side of things, like 4 years in after I had to fight to get the treatment, like I would ever risk getting it again.
You felt that she was suggesting that you were to blame for having got the hepatitis C in the first place.
Yeah, a little bit.
You also saw Dr. Canna a year after clearing the hepatitis C in August 2018, and you say she seemed shocked by your appearance.
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened at that appointment?
Yeah, she was just surprised in my sort of physical change and that kind of thing. Sorry.
You say that you felt she had assumed you'd previously just been fat and lazy, and
Yes.
that the hepatitis C had had no impact.
Yes, just due to all my previous experience with all the doctors who just sort of dismissed me for that reason. I felt she did as well. I felt she didn't want to give me the treatment. And I was on a mission to massively change physically, because I could physically, because it didn't hurt anymore. But also to prove the point that they assume people with hepatitis C are one way or the other. I think they have a lot of assumptions about them, and I wanted to prove this is what it looks like with and without the hep C. I wanted them to see the difference it made. I wanted to prove to them that I was worthy of the fight, basically.
And you told Dr. Canna how angry you were,
I did let rip, yes.
and you were angry that she'd made assumptions about your lifestyle because of the way you'd looked.
Yes.
And she apologised.
She did. I do appreciate that.
And she could see your point of view, and her opinions of people from hepatitis C had changed over the year. You were given, in August 2018, you were given a blood test form for a year's time, so August 19.
Yes.
And you copied the blood test form.
I did.
Why was that?
Because I just wanted to gain some kind of control over my life. To get appointments, they're really hard, and obviously, because I've always had hepatitis C, so I've never known how my body felt without it. So every time, even though I was cleared, in my head, I would quite like to be tested on a weekly basis because I was so terrified of it coming back. And every time I'd get a cold, I didn't know, like, is this just a cold or is this like a reoccurrence? Is it coming back? So I wanted to have the blood test form, so because once you've got one, you can just pop into phlebotomy and then you get the results. So I just wanted to gain that bit of control. I wouldn't have to ring up, make an appointment, beg, explain why I need a blood test because I'm scared. That I could just go in, do it, and they'll just give me the results. So I used it once in January 2019 because I wasn't feeling great, and I got the results over the phone and it was fine. And then I used it again when I was supposed to.
You received that second set of blood test results by text
Yes.
from the nurse.
Yes.
And you were unhappy about receiving them by text.
No. To give context, the Hep C nurse Trez always generally gave me them by text because we'd miss phone calls. But I was due an appointment with Dr. Kana, a follow-up post follow-up appointment, which is I would have liked to have had that meeting with her to get the results. I was happy to get the results via text on this occasion because I wanted the results, but I also wanted them from Dr. Kana so I could speak to her again.
You'd been told you'd have another appointment in a year's time, so August 2019.
Yes.
But that appointment was not forthcoming.
No.
And you've chased for it.
I did, yes.
And you now do have an appointment in sometime in the next few months.
November 11th, yeah.
Again, in Dr. Canna's statement, she's indicated that there are delays in the hospital of 3 to 4 months. And at that time, she said you were on the list for an appointment, but there was a backlog. You're not entirely convinced by that?
Not completely, no. No, I think I only got the appointment because I rang her secretary to get one, but I also, as you know, the next part of the story, which is added to my statement at a later date because I've only just found out, is I also rang her, again, quite upset and distressed and angry because a sequence of events turns out that we did try to conceive again, and I had tests because it wasn't working, and as far as I was aware, can I go into this bit?
Let's pause a moment, but you chased Dr. Canna and her secretary,
yeah.
And you feel that if you hadn't chased, you wouldn't have got that appointment?
No, but I also made a complaint after that, and that's the only reason I got an appointment with her, because there was another issue that
we're going to come to in just one moment.
I'm getting with the programme, sorry.
We just need to take it stage by stage so that everyone else in the room can follow along with what's happened to you. Since clearing the virus, you've lost a huge amount of weight. And the other thing that's happened is your blood tests for your diabetes are now also clear and normal.
Yes.
You'd noticed during your treatment for hepatitis C that when your hepatitis C levels were undetectable, your diabetes blood tests were also normal.
Yes.
And they've said they went abnormal when you relapsed.
Yes.
But then since you've cleared, your diabetes tests have been normal throughout.
Yes, and I mean, I maintained it via diet and exercise when I was first told. And I know because my husband, that stress also has a large factor. It doesn't matter what you eat or what you do, if you're stressed, they will spike. So I can't say that the correlation's either due to the stress from being told about the hepatitis C or whether it was directly involved because of body parts making it. But I know I do feel they were related.
We'll come to your fertility investigations in a moment, but in parallel with those, about 18 months ago, you started the process to try and adopt a child.
Yes, we did.
As part of that process, concerns were raised about your emotional well-being.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we've done about 18 months training. We've done all the courses and all that, and obviously they come and chat to you. And I think we're progressing quite well, but every time they ask you about history and how you get to the point of this, of adoption and stuff. And obviously we have to be transparent in that. So we told them about this, and every time I had to talk about it, I wasn't able to do so. I just kind of broke down in tears. I just couldn't get any further. And they felt that my emotional state on this wasn't ideal at this time, so they told me to seek counselling, which I have done so.
You just found it too traumatic to talk about the years when the GP had not diagnosed you?
Yes. Yeah.
And the effect of that on you?
Mm.
You've, as you say, recently been able to access counselling, but you've had to seek that privately because the waiting times were too long for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you knew you needed to get on with it if you were going to
Yes.
progress any adoption.
Yes, I did contact Beds Wellbeing, that help was off. Well, that signpost was offered by the adoption agency, not by the hepatitis thing. So I rang up Beds Wellbeing, but there was a 6-month waiting list, and quite frankly, by then, I do think mental health is as urgent as a bleeding, chopped off arm, in its urgency. But it's just not as visible.
As part of that counselling, you went back to your GP to express your anger at how you were treated.
I did, yes.
And how did they respond?
I didn't go back in an angry. I just wanted to. After the counselling, I just wanted to deal with some things that I couldn't talk about before. I think that's where my silence came from not being able to talk, because I was kind of shut down at every point. So I wrote down all the times, sort of listed the times that I'd been to have the appointments with him and how he had reacted. And I told him, I said, this is what happened, and this is where I am now, and I'm quite upset about this situation. And he cried and he apologised, and we had a hug, and it was nice. And I said I didn't want to take it any further, because at that time I'd expected everything was over, and I wanted to kind of move forward. I just wanted to put things to rest and let go and move on.
Nevertheless, you've developed a strong distrust of doctors.
Yes.
And that has concerned social workers in the adoption process.
Yes, they feel that, obviously, because I've struggled to talk about it, and with them, they feel like if I had a child that needed help, I wouldn't be able to apply it, but I know that I would now, because I would, to the death, get them sorted, and I wouldn't take no for an answer anymore.
You feel that actually, you said in your statement, actually you'd be a much stronger advocate for your child with the doctors than you would otherwise have been.
Yes, yeah.
Nevertheless, at this stage, the adoption process is currently on hold.
It is, yes.
Until you are feeling stronger emotionally.
Yes.
More recently, you've had further private fertility investigations.
Yes, I did.
And they've revealed that you're now almost infertile.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And they have indicated to you that IVF is not an option.
Yes, they pretty much said, don't bother. Yeah, and for a private company to say that, because they could milk me, because obviously I'm desperate, they didn't say come in for further tests. I mean, I'm going back to have a conversation just to see it, but they said IVF, because it's they'd have to put so many drugs in me to stimulate the eggs. They wouldn't want to do it. And for them to say that, yeah.
Can you say something about how that's affected you emotionally, or would you prefer me to read something that you wrote?
Yeah, maybe if you could read it, that would be good, thanks.
This is from a letter that you wrote to Dr. Canner, to the nurse and to the NICE team, setting out what had happened to you. And you've said this: I've been failed not only once by not being diagnosed for over 36 years and having to beg you for treatment, but then again, once I finally managed to pick myself up and try to move on, you failed me as a trusted professional. You failed to inform me of a consequence of a treatment that has ruined my future by sacrificing my fertility without even telling me. You took away my choice. I deserved a choice. I'd spent so many years being ignored and dismissed by all GPs when I was right, and you've done it again. And through all of this, the only concern any doctor ever had was over my BMI. Never my well-being, never my mental health, only ever this, which was mainly caused by the Hep C, causing so much joint and muscle pain and chronic fatigue. Now I fit in your BMI box. It's too late. You blew my world apart, not just once, but twice. You've broken my heart. I'll never forgive you for this. You okay to carry on? In terms of your working life, Jan, you trained in fashion and costume and set up your own business as a wedding dressmaker.
Yes.
And we've got a picture from your website of some of the dresses that you made yourself by your own hands, and if we can show that now. You couldn't maintain the work, either physically making the dresses, but also the administrative work of running something as a sole trader during your treatment. And so far, you haven't been able to return to it.
No.
Financially, that's obviously been difficult for you both. No one told you about any financial assistance throughout this until your mum was told by a colleague at work.
Yes, yeah, she had no idea. She just bumped into someone who had a similar thing, and they said, "Oh, there's a Skipton fund." She wasn't told about it by her GP or hepatology. It was just by a stranger.
You've got some comments you wanted to make about how the annual payment is calculated.
No, I don't know.
If that's okay. We talked beforehand about still having some brain fog, so please don't worry. In your statement, you've said that you'd received the same lump sum your mum had, and even though the payments were 20 years apart, there was no increase to account for inflation, and that you receive a certain amount per month, and it's based on joint income, which you don't feel should be the case.
Yes, yeah. They say there's X amount given when my mum was found out, and that amount has stayed the same amount regardless of the years that have passed. And obviously, say 20 grand 20 years ago, there's been inflation, just saying, that should have been reflected, but that's neither here nor there. What was the next bit?
But you've also said it shouldn't be based on joint income.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. I've got a wonderful husband, Gary, who's still here regardless. I don't know how. It's amazing. And we're living off his income until the recent events changed with the scheme, that's what I've been using to deal with my counselling and that kind of thing. So I am very grateful for that. But I don't think it should be reflected on whether you're married or not, because if you're on your own, I would have been up the creek. I don't like having to rely on him, and obviously there were times when we were at breaking point from this, and I'm glad obviously we're still together. But yeah, you shouldn't have. If you're on your own, it shouldn't. I don't know where I'm going.
You've said it takes away the independence you have as a person.
Yeah, if I'd have wanted to leave, I couldn't, basically, and I'm glad I didn't leave. But there were times when it made you crazy, and I wanted to leave, but I wasn't financially able to do that. So I can't imagine how hard it'd be if you've got this and you're on your own. It would have been awful.
And you've said you don't feel it should be that your partner's income is included in any calculations.
No, it really shouldn't be, because they're not. It should be done on the individual basis, because they're the ones dealing with the hepatitis.
I'm just going to turn to Ms Gibbs, who, as you know, represents you, to see whether there's anything else she would like me to raise. Just 2 points that Ms Gibbs would like me to pick up with you. When you had the interferon treatment, you've mentioned to Ms Gibbs that you feel it changed your personality.
Yes.
And particularly a propensity to swear a lot.
Yeah.
How do you feel that those are related?
For myself, I was a swearer before, so I'm not going to deny that. But I did become very sweary. The CONT word is like my favourite, and I'm renowned for it, and it's a bit of a joke now. But my mum, who wasn't a swearer, started swearing as well, and she hated that. And it's only being here and listening to other people's statements, you can see the correlation between the other. I haven't admitted to a lot of the things that were side effects, because you just thought, you didn't know they weren't until you sort of can see the reflection in other people, the same kind of things.
And you've talked very positively about exercise and boxing, but I'm asked to ask you what your feelings are about your dependency on exercise now.
obviously, yeah, I started as part of like my recovery and getting better, and then it sort of, as I got less work, I feel decadent and self-indulgent that I mainly spend my time at the gym, and I realised it's mainly because I'm trying to validate myself as a person to the doctors to go, look, actually I was worth, I was worth saving, I was worth queue jumping. And I feel like I've been doing that ever since.
That's everything I want to ask you, Jan. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
In regards to support during and after the treatment, I do think it should be something that needs to be looked into. Obviously, the historical side of it. I was born after most of it happened, so I haven't got much say on that. Like, I don't know enough. But moving forwards, I think a lot more care needs to be given during treatment and post-treatment, sort of emotionally, mentally, because the fallout from the after. I mean, I felt crap before, and physically I'm great now, but my head's a mess, and there's been no help for that. And I have asked for help, and I did go and ask my hepatitis nurse, and she, as I said, she said, oh, yeah, there's no funding for that here. And I was about to go to Australia because I just wanted to get away and have some fun. And she's like, go and have it out there privately, because obviously I was going through the adoption process. And I didn't, I'm very transparent and honest in most things. And my only concern is that if the adoption people knew about this, how I felt, it wouldn't stand very well for us. But I need to be honest about it now because I think it's a terrible side effect. And I don't know if it was worth it, to be honest. Yeah, so just that.
Thank you.
Jan, for someone who just a short while ago broke down when talking to someone privately and couldn't discuss what had happened, I think you've validated yourself as a person, so far as the inquiry is concerned, by being prepared to talk to us all here and to a wider audience out there about the way that you've seen your experiences, and particularly when they've involved such personal matters. Thank you very much indeed for giving your evidence. Well done.
Thank you for listening.
Well, we're going to take an early lunch. We'll come back at 1:15.
And sir, after lunch, the live stream will be off. For those watching at the moment, the live stream will be off.
Yes. So if anyone is out there looking for something following on at 1:15, they'll be disappointed.